Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait 1 minute to let everyone in before we begin. Thank you for joining us. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Michal Divon. I'm a journalist and TV host. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you, our FIDF supporters, hosting Cooking with FIDF. We are delighted to be joined very shortly by Tanya Zuckerbrot, CEO and founder of F Factor, who together with her husband, Anthony Westreich, are staunch supporters of FIDF and of course our IDF soldiers. As FIDF Women's Brigade and Affinity Group board members, we thank you, Tanya and Anthony, for your unwavering support. Friends of the IDF is also a cause that is very dear to me. As an IDF veteran myself, I strongly believe in supporting the well-being of our soldiers, especially during challenging times like these, which are different than what we're usually used to, but these are challenging nonetheless. And we know this is a hard time for everyone, yet that doesn't stop the soldiers from going above and beyond their call of duty. The IDF soldiers are on call 24/7 to protect and defend the state of Israel. And during this pandemic, the IDF hasn't missed a beat, not only on the front lines, but also on the home front. Just watch.
The worldwide coronavirus pandemic continues. The IDF is taking action.
המדינה כולה מתגייסת, וצה"ל כבר מסייע, ויסייע בכל מקום שצריך ואפשר.
The IDF's Homefront Command is facilitating the use of 2 large hotels in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem for the treatment of coronavirus patients and has established a joint information center with Israel's Emergency Medical Service.
Well, first of all, let me welcome you to the newly founded COVID-19 IDF lab. We are all together working in order to sample our soldiers and produce the results for the corona tests.
The IDF is also cooperating with Palestinian medical teams in order to combat the spread of COVID-19 by transferring hundreds of coronavirus test kits and necessary medical supplies from Israel to the Palestinian territories and Gaza. The IDF has also taken measures to ensure that its operational readiness is maintained, including keeping combat soldiers on their military bases until further notice.
Wow. All right. Got a little teary there. I have to say the IDF never stops impressing me. I'm not surprised, but I'm truly impressed. And I never take it for granted as an Israeli seeing such incredible support coming from here. All right. We have all had to take on tasks that maybe we wouldn't have normally taken on during this really strange time. Maybe doing some things that aren't our favorite things to do. For some of us, it might even be cooking. With these stay-at-home orders, every one of us has turned into a master chef. I know I've tried a few new things in the kitchen, or at least on Instagram. But in order to take us to the next level, we are honored to be joined by Tanya Zuckerbrot, a celebrity dietitian and CEO and founder of the renowned F Factor diet, to teach us how to make a healthy, meat-free cauliflower bolognese in just 30 minutes. Tanya, I'm turning it over to you, and honestly, I am so happy to be learning a few things.
Well, thank you, Michal, for having me, and thank you to the FIDF. I'm such a proud member of the Women's Brigade, and not only am I a Zionist, but at the core is really just my love of family. And this is a dish that you could feed to your family because it's super, super healthy. And because it's vegetarian, you can pair this, if you keep kosher, you can pair this with either meat or dairy. So it works either way. The only change would be the cheese, but it's a really simple, nutritious dish. It's F-Factor approved. F-Factor is a combination of fiber and protein, and this dish is rich in both of them, despite the fact that it's a vegetarian dish. And that's because we use a secret ingredient, which I will get to in a few minutes. So are you ready to get started? Okay, so the secret ingredient that is going to make this vegetarian dish a high protein dish is mushrooms. Many people are not aware that mushrooms are filled with protein. They contain B6 and B12, and these are nutrients that many people who are vegetarians often lack in their diet. The great thing about mushrooms is not only is it adding protein to this sauce, but it is going to really give the appearance of meat. Once we brown this, it really is going to look like ground meat without having meat. And as I said, whether you're vegetarian or you're just trying to eat a more plant-based diet, this is a dish that would fool even your most avid meat-loving friend or family member because it really ends up looking just like a traditional bolognese. So we begin with 12 ounces of mushrooms, and you can put the mushrooms into a Cuisinart and just pulse it. I don't have a Cuisinart here, so I just did a rough chop. So either way, chopping it only took 2 minutes, but I did prepare that in advance. And I'm cooking on this convection top. So let me just raise the heat now that we're all together. And I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil to my pot. And then we're going to saute the mushrooms. And you just want to stir the mushrooms. Mushrooms have a very high water content, so you're going to see that they cook fairly quickly. And you do want to keep stirring them while they cook. Now, the other sneaky ingredient is cauliflower. And what made me think of using cauliflower for this recipe was cauliflower has become pretty popular. I mean, a few years ago, no one wanted to eat cauliflower, and now we're eating cauliflower pizza, cauliflower rice, cauliflower gnocchi. So I wanted to think of a creative way of using cauliflower that no one had done before. And that's where I came up with this bolognese idea, where I could use the cauliflower to add volume, which means that you get a large portion for very few calories, which is why cauliflower has become so popular. Really smoky. And it's because you can cook a lot of low-carb meals with it. A cup of cauliflower is only 25 calories, and it's a good source of fiber. So that's why you see so many people using cauliflower in cooking. But if you just wanted to make a cauliflower bolognese, you would miss that meatiness that the mushrooms are going to impart. So now that I have my mushrooms have been browned, and like I said, you're only going to cook this for a few minutes, but if I could, let me get some oven mitts so I can tilt this towards you guys. It's actually starting to look just like ground beef. And when it comes to the mushrooms, you can use any mushrooms you want. You can use a white button mushroom. You could use shiitake mushrooms. I'm using a crimini mushroom, which it looks like a white button mushroom, but it's brown in color, because I want it to really look like ground beef. So if I start off with a mushroom that's brown, I'm getting a head start on that color. All right, so now I'm gonna add my aromatics. And aromatics are carrot, celery, and onion. It's what we call a mirepoix. It's a pretty traditional base for almost like any sauce or stew. So it's 1 large onion that's been diced. You're gonna add that. 2 carrots that have been peeled and diced. And 2 large stalks of celery that have been diced. Okay. And we're going to let these vegetables cook down a little bit. Get a good stir on here. So while these vegetables are sweating and caramelizing, it'll allow me to talk about the other ingredients that we'll be using. So for those joining late, we are making a vegetarian or a meatless cauliflower bolognese. So far in the pot, we have 12 ounces of mushrooms that have been pretty much like chopped really finely, but if you have a Cuisinart, you can just pulse it. Once you cook down the mushrooms, we added 1 onion, 2 stalks of celery, and 2 carrots. And we want this to caramelize, so you want to cook this at a high heat. The reason you want that caramelization is that brings out the natural sugars found in vegetables. We don't often think about vegetables as having sugar. It's not a lot of sugar, but it's enough to really bring out the sweetness, which is why roasting vegetables makes them taste so different than when you eat them raw, right? If you guys have ever had like caramelized or roasted carrots or parsnips, like they just taste so much sweeter than if you had them raw. And it's because the cooking brings out the sugar in it. So you do want to make sure that you saute it long enough that you get a little bit of caramelization, and it's beginning to happen. I'm going to give that another minute, and as I said, share with you the other ingredients. We are going to be using 6 cloves of garlic, and that is a lot. So you better make sure that whoever you're feeding this to also likes garlic, so that you guys are all sort of on the same page, because I would say if one person eats garlic and no one else eats garlic, it's problematic for the person who had the garlic. But when everyone eats the garlic, no one notices because you all have the same breath. But we will also be cooking this down and bring out the caramelization as well. The garlic is essential to this dish because it's really going to impart that traditional Italian flavor that we want in a bolognese that cooks for hours, but we're only cooking this for 30 minutes. So please do not skimp on the garlic. And garlic also has so many health benefits. It's high in antioxidants, and it actually has antiviral properties. And during this time where the coronavirus is so rampant, we're all thinking about ways to boost our immunity, and we want to look for foods that have antiviral properties. Garlic is one of them. All spices, in fact, have great antiviral properties. So this is a good time to be cooking with your favorite spices. And we're gonna be using 2 spices today, which I'll be adding as the sauce continues to cook. So now that my vegetables have caramelized, and it looks very good. I apologize for the smoke. I wish I had a vent. I feel like a witch's brew, but hopefully you guys can see me. Put this aside, perhaps. I don't think that's helping. Okay, I'm gonna add 6 cloves of garlic. And the reason that you add the garlic after the aromatics is because garlics burn much more quickly than onions do. And we needed the onions and the carrots and the celery to cook a little bit longer. And since garlic takes so little time to cook and it burns very easily, I really like to add it on its own so I can keep my eye on it. It's starting to smell really good in here, guys. Keep stirring this. Okay. Now comes the deglazing. So we are going to use a red wine. Of course, you can find a kosher wine. It is really important that when you cook with wine, you use a wine that you would drink on its own, because it is, while we're going to cook the alcohol off, which is why you can feed this to your children, there's no alcohol in the dish, we will cook the alcohol off, the taste of the wine remains. So you don't need an expensive wine. This is not when you should be using like a $200 bottle of wine, but you also don't want something that you wouldn't drink on its own. So I will be the guinea pig. I will make sure that this passes the drink alone test. And if it does, then I will add it to my pot here. Yes, that's very good. And if it makes you guys feel better, I think this bottle was less than $15. I got it at Publix. So this came from the supermarket. It's called Josh, but the label is really fancy. So this is a great wine to know about if you are looking for a good full-bodied red wine, inexpensive but full of flavor. And we are going to add half a cup of wine to the sauce. Once again, for those asking, it's called Josh, but the label is really pretty, guys. It's a good wine to know about, and it's a delicious wine. So by adding the wine, this is what we call deglazing, and you get off all those bits of the vegetables that have stuck to the bottom, and you want all of that flavor, all that caramelization in your sauce. Okay. Now, next up, and this is super important, this is what's going to give your sauce that deep color. It's 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. And you want to put this in the corner of the pan. I push the vegetables aside and I make a spot for the tomato paste. And all I do is I stir it, and you want to keep an eye on the tomato paste. You want it to go from that bright red to a dark, dark brown. And that's what's going to make this look like there's meat in here, rather than it being a bright traditional tomato sauce. Cooking the tomato paste and getting it to turn from red to brown is really going to change the appearance of the sauce. Something else that's important to note about tomatoes and tomato sauce, tomatoes contain a compound called lycopene. And lycopene is an antioxidant that fights free radical damage. So that's why lycopene has really been shown to reduce the risk of cancer or to help fight free radicals that can lead to cancer. Interesting, the lycopene in raw tomatoes has a lower bioavailability than when you cook it. So things like tomato sauce and even ketchup have higher values of lycopene than the raw tomatoes. So always think about tomato sauce and even ketchup is somewhat of a health food because the lycopene concentration is so much greater. So I love cooking with tomatoes, tomato sauce. Okay, I'm browning the tomato paste, and the color is changing. It went from this really bright red to almost a maroon. It's almost there. While that's continuing to brown, I'm going to show you the remaining ingredients. We have rice cauliflower. Now, there are many ways to get rice cauliflower. You can buy a whole head of cauliflower and put it into the food processor and make it yourself. That is time consuming, but it's simple enough. Or you can do what I did and buy the bags of rice cauliflower, which have become so omnipresent. I mean, a few years ago, you could only find whole cauliflowers, and now you can find bags of rice cauliflower, both fresh in the produce section or in the freezer aisle. So this is what it looks like. There are many, many brands. And what's amazing about the cauliflower is it is going to add a lot of volume to this sauce. And what I mean by volume, it's going to give you more sauce. Now, why is that important? Because when people are managing their weight, people don't want to eat small portions because then you're walking around hungry all the time. So if I can create recipes that have high nutrient density, meaning a lot of vitamins and nutrients, and provide you with a lot of quantity, but it's low in calories, you're going to fool your brain into feeling super satisfied despite the fact that the calories are super low. So this dish, believe it or not, is half the calories of a traditional bolognese because it's made with pure vegetables, and vegetables have lower calories than meat, and vegetables contain antioxidants and vitamins and phytonutrients that meat simply does not. But if we went totally meat-free and we didn't have the mushrooms, we'd be lacking the B vitamins, and then this really wouldn't be a complete meal for a vegetarian. But this meal is a complete meal. is a perfect combination of fiber and protein. It is nutrient dense. It's an amazing, amazing one-pot meal. You guys are really going to love it. Okay, our tomato paste is nice and brown. It is time to add 3 cups of riced cauliflower. Every cup is only 25 calories. It's amazing. And you get so much volume, antioxidants, phytochemicals. I'm going to add that right in. I want to give that a good stir. Okay, now we're going to season it with oregano. This is the other spice that I was saying with antiviral properties. 1 teaspoon of oregano and half a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Stir that. And now we're going to add 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. And now you're going to stir this together. So, if you know anyone who's Italian, they will tell you that on Sundays, their grandma, their mom makes homemade marinara sauce or a homemade tomato sauce, and it cooks on the oven for like 6 hours. Well, many of us don't have 6 hours, and that's really where the tomato paste really helps you to cheat the amount of cooking time. If you did not use the tomato paste, this sauce would taste raw. It would just taste like tomato sauce that you've reheated. The tomato paste adds that flavor that is going to fool everyone into thinking that this sauce has been on the stove for 6 hours. It's a great hack, and I assure you guys, it makes such an amazing difference. As I said, we still want to cook this so all the flavors come together, but we're only going to cook it for around 20 minutes instead of hours that a traditional red sauce would cook for. And no one is going to know the difference, I promise you. I have made this dish so many times for friends and family. Everybody loves it. People cannot believe that there's no meat in it because it looks identical to bolognese, but it has no meat in it. It's just one of those great sort of I fooled you kind of recipes that you can feel so good, feeding to your friends and family. Or as I said, if you are vegetarian, this is just so wholesome. So we're gonna let this simmer. While this simmers, so you basically want now to remove your spoon and you want to cover this. Finally, no more steam. I could sit back. Oh, that's not working. Have a sip and then we're gonna get the pasta going. Okay, so I always try and clean as I cook. So let me just move some stuff aside. And while the sauce is simmering, this is when you want to prepare your pasta. So that's why I love this dish so much, is that you can do 2 things at the same time. So you could see that it is a great recipe when you have time constraints, and you will see from beginning to end, this whole thing is less than 30 minutes. Now, I have a pot of boiling water behind me. I did get that going. When it comes to pasta, there are so many varieties. F-Factor is a high fiber diet, so I always look for pastas that have fiber in it because fiber has so many amazing properties. Fiber revs up your metabolism, it keeps you feeling fuller for longer. Fiber combined with fat and calories in other foods and ushered out of the body. When it comes to health, fiber lowers cholesterol, it manages your blood sugar levels. Fiber even can improve the health of your gut. Fiber can actually repopulate the microbiome, and it can cause your gut to basically to flourish. And the more microflora you have in your gut, the less inflammation you have in your body. So a high fiber diet actually reduces inflammation, and it's all we're hearing about right now. It's the biggest buzzword in health. Inflammation is linked to every autoimmune condition, whether it's psoriasis, alopecia, Crohn's, colitis. Parkinson's, MS, premature aging, and even cancer. So anything we can do to repopulate our microbiome and reduce inflammation should be an important sort of thought when you're thinking about how you want to change your diet or what are simple ways to get healthier. And fiber can do just that. So we know that fiber has all these great weight management properties, but fiber also has so many health benefits. So try and find a pasta with at least 5 grams of fiber. There are many brands out there. I've seen pasta with as much as 15 to 20 grams of fiber. So just do your research. Now, if you don't want to use pasta at all, you can use zucchini noodles, which are no carb as well. So it's really up to you what kind of pasta you like. And I can also tell you this sauce is so good on its own. Sometimes I just put it into a bowl with a little bit of cheese on top and I just eat it like that. But since we are calling this the cauliflower bolognese, I want to be traditional about it, and I do want to serve it on top of a bowl of pasta. So I am using a whole grain pasta. I'm going to get this into the pot, and it's perfect because the sauce needs to cook for another 10 minutes, and the pasta takes exactly 10 minutes. And then we just combine it together. Although I am still missing 2 more ingredients, but we have to add them at the very end. So when I add my pasta, we thought that could be a great time. We'll have a few minutes that you and I can chat. We could talk all things, you know, FIDF, all things health, family, you know, whatever you want to ask me. So we just get this in the pot, and then we'll set the timer, and then we'll know in 8 to 10 minutes we're ready to eat. Let me just get this in the pot. So that was added to a pot of salted water. Please, please, please make sure that you add 1 to 2 tablespoons of salt to your water. Your pasta will not absorb it all, but if you prepare pasta without salt, the pasta is completely bland. And Italians believe that pasta should actually have flavor. Pasta on its own should taste like something, and therefore you do want to make sure you salt your water. What you never want to do is put oil into your pot. Many people, it's like an American thing that we add oil to the pasta pot with the water because we don't want the pasta to stick together. The problem is once that pasta is coated with oil, once you drain it, the sauce won't stick to it, it'll slide off. So please do not add oil to your pasta water, but please do add around a tablespoon of salt so that your pasta has flavor on its own, and then we'll combine the two. Let me just give it a stir. Now I have 10 minutes. Typically, if I was not here with you guys, I would use those 10 minutes to clean my countertop, which is great because then all of a sudden this dish comes together and the kitchen's clean and everyone's ready to eat and you're ready too. But since I have company today, I will wait to clean my kitchen till I'm done, but I will enjoy my glass of wine while conversing with you guys.
Tanya, you're making us look bad, I have to say. Cooking and cleaning while you do it, and at the end having a meal in a clean kitchen. That's a lot.
I mean, this quarantine, right? We have become short order cooks. We have to do it all. Look, but as I said, you know, if you have a roof over your head and food in the fridge, and you have your health, you know, I should be careful what I'm complaining about. But yeah.
Okay, before we started, you mentioned you have 5 kids. When did you start cooking?
I've been cooking since childhood. In fact, I had really intended to become a chef professionally and not a registered dietitian, but I misunderstood the curriculum title at NYU. So undergraduate, I was at University of Michigan. I went to NYU to what I thought was going to be receiving a master's about food. And I was going to use that education about food to become a chef. And when I got there, they handed me a list of the prerequisites, and it was anatomy, physiology, inorganic chem, organic chem, biochem, and I was left scratching my head, looking at these prereqs. I'm like, I'm not pre-med. I was like handing it back to the teacher. I'm like, I'm here for the courses on apples. You know, I'm here to learn about food. The issue was the master's title was called Food and Nutrition Studies. So shame on me for not understanding that the degree I was thinking I was getting was actually a departure from what they were teaching. And because I had paid my tuition, I felt sort of stuck. So I just said, I better figure this out. So I put my head down, and that's when I had this, you know, I just had to pivot. And as it turns out, wow. I obviously love being a registered dietitian. I love my career, and it still allows me to prepare healthy food. So I get to sort of marry my clinical background, because my background now is completely clinical, where I prescribe, ways of eating for patients with conditions from cardiovascular to diabetes or just for weight management. But I also recognize how important it is that people enjoy their food even when they want to eat healthfully. So it turns out I was able to marry my passion for cooking with the degree that I ended up getting.
And that's a very funny way to start, although I feel like everyone has in life kind of what they intended and then things that happen. So you're just really an overqualified chef.
100%. Well, the saying, you plan, God laughs, and that's for sure. I never expected to end up, forget it being a clinical dietitian, but even once I got that degree, to be recognized for like weight loss, because once I had this clinical degree, weight loss seemed beneath my skill set. So it's all just been a bunch of like these happy accidents. But ultimately, I love my work. I love inspiring people to live their best lives, to not only look their best, but to feel their best, to honor their health. I want food to taste good, because if not, it's not sustainable. Life's too short to suffer.
And your family audience is good enough. I mean, there are 5 kids at home that you have to make sure like your food. And that's a pretty tough audience to have to begin with.
Yes, kids don't lie, guys. They are very outspoken. And the other thing is, my kids don't care necessarily about health yet. That's just not on their radar. So if my kids are eating what I know to be super healthy food and they just think it's yummy food, then it's a winning recipe.
How old are they?
So they span from 17 to 14.
Okay.
The last 2 are twin girls. So I got my hands full.
You really do. Are you a vegetarian?
I am not. I eat meat. And in fact, if you were to say to me, I don't know if you could see me through the smoke, Tanya, what would be your last meal on earth? My last meal on earth would be pasta bolognese. I absolutely love it. And as I recognize that people are becoming more thoughtful about plant-based eating, whether it's because they are supporting animal rights, or they're just pro-environment because obviously it's much more sustainable. There's fewer green grass emissions, raising crops of vegetables than it is to produce meat. Or if they're just more focused on plant-based eating for their health. I wanted to come up with a substitute for my favorite meal on earth that was plant-based. So I do eat meat, and I believe that all food groups can fit into a well-balanced diet, but I completely respect that sometimes people have food aversions or certain philosophies that inspire them to cut meat out. So this is
So do you think I can fool my husband to thinking that this meal is meat?
I think when he sees it, 100%. The appearance of this looks 100% like meat.
Which is a huge factor.
Well, yes, because you eat with your eyes first.
Mm-hmm.
But once you taste it, it will taste like almost like a vegetable bolognese. Like, meat is such a specific flavor, but it is so flavorful as a sauce. He'll just think it's a really yummy dish. But when you see it, it could fool anyone. I mean,
I'm going to try this.
The exact appearance. Let me see if I bring it to the camera. And we're not done yet, but you could see it really does look like a traditional bolognese. Am I too high?
100%.
It's getting there.
So tell us about your involvement with FIDF. How did that start? For me as an Israeli, I'm always really surprised and I guess at this point just really appreciative of all the support that we received here. So what got you hooked?
Well, I've always been a Zionist, and I've been involved with other philanthropies that support Israel. And I believe as an American Jewish person, and certainly a mother, and I'll explain where the mother comes in, it really is my obligation to ensure that Israel is protected and safe. Certainly for me, but as I said, as a mom, for my children and their children and their children. And therefore, my attraction to the FIDF was pretty organic, just felt so right. The way I got involved and I learned about it though was through my husband. My husband is Anthony Westreich, and he was invited on a real estate trip. A bunch of colleagues went to Israel, and Anthony hadn't been to Israel in a while, and he would call me every day, and he was so blown away by the changes to Israel, but also just by meeting so many of the soldiers, really understanding how these soldiers risk their lives every day to make Israel safe for us. And as American Jews, it's our responsibility to support them. So Anthony came home and we discussed it, and we then adopted 3 brigades, and we went back with our children to meet them, which was so great. And you know, I think for me also, raising my children to identify themselves as Zionists and to have my children really understand that Israel is their home. You know, they have 2 homes. One is in the United States and one is in Israel. And therefore we need to take care of our home and our people. So it was just so great to see my children, you know, at the base, speaking to the soldiers. And I came back from that trip and I was just really inspired to do more. And then we started the Women's Brigade in New York. And, you know, we hope just to keep raising awareness and obviously raising much needed funds to support these soldiers and their families.
I understand you were supposed to be in Israel right now.
Yes, yes, we're supposed to. We take our children every year after school. It's a new thing we started a few years ago. Once, as I said, we really started to want to instill in them, and we thought they were old enough to really understand how important Israel is, you know, to all Jewish people, and how it really is our obligation to support Israel through tourism, but also through philanthropy.
And I mean, we can't talk about Israel and not mention the food and the culinary scene. Can you give us some of the highlights and some of the culinary experiences?
On my last trip to Israel, I was so blown away by how the culinary scene there really has exploded. It reminds me of what we saw in California, like, you know, 20 years ago, where you just have chefs that are producing the most extraordinary food and it's so fresh. I mean, I think Israelis take so much pride in the quality of their produce, of their fish, of their meat. I mean, and then just the way that these flavors are combined, that I would go to restaurants and you would like see a dish and they would list like all the ingredients, and there was like 20 ingredients, and it was just yet it looks so simple because Israelis are so unpretentious. So nothing stuffy, but you understand that so much heart and technique is going into this food. And I just think the food there is some of the best in the world. Like, if you are looking for a culinary experience, forget Paris, forget New York, you have to go to Tel Aviv. I mean, it was just incredible. We did not have a bad meal. From breakfast from the shashuka breakfast to the lunches, the fresh salads, to the fish, to the dinners. I mean, it was just incredible.
And it's healthy because we really love our vegetable-based diet.
The diet's high in monounsaturated fats, tons of vegetables. It's just so easy to be healthy there. And it's just, the food's so flavorful. It's just amazing.
Was there anything you really felt like preparing once you got back? Anything you tasted there for the first time that you said, wow, this is something that I need in my kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty obsessed with shashuka ever since, you know,
I agree.
all the time. It's just, it's such a nice way to start the day. You know, it's savory. It's actually a good lunch or dinner. What else do I love? I love a good Israeli salad. I love couscous. I love hummus. So now I buy my own tahini and I make it myself. So little things like that. But yeah, I love the freshness of Israeli cuisine. I think that's really what makes it really stand out.
You're an honorary Israeli. If you're making your own tahini and you like shakshuka in the morning, that's it. You're in.
Okay, so now my sauce is almost done. I apologize, guys, for the smoke. We had to set this up on the counter, so I don't have a vent above me. I hope you can see me. All right, this is a very important trick, guys, as we finish off the sauce. I'm gonna check on my pasta. My pasta is done. The sauce is almost done. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but when you, let me put this aside maybe, hold on, so we don't, okay. That when you go to a restaurant, bolognese is never bright red. You know, when you go to the supermarket and you see a jar of ragu, or you see a jar of Prego, or I mean, any brand, marinara sauce or spaghetti sauce is bright red. but in a restaurant, it's rarely bright red, especially Bolognese. It almost has like a light pink hue. And especially when you go to Italy. And I was always sort of confused by that. Like, how did they get it to be pink? And then around 10 years ago, I was watching the Food Network, and I was watching Mario Batali, who, if you don't know him, he's a great Italian chef, and he was making a traditional Bolognese, where he sauteed the meats with the aromatics, just like what we did now, except he didn't use mushrooms and cauliflower. He just used the meat. I think he used like veal, pork, and beef or something. I mean, you know, hearty. And at the very end, he goes, this is the secret to making a really rich, lustrous, creamy Bolognese. Milk. I was like, oh my gosh, I never knew they put milk into Bolognese. So of course, if you're kosher, you're not doing that. But if you are kosher and you want to do it with meat, you can add almond milk, which is plant-based because it's dairy-free. We are going to use almond milk in this dish. So if you did want to serve this with meat, even though this is a complete meal, you could. Or if you wanted to keep it dairy, there's no meat in here. So that is the secret, guys. I'm going to use 1 cup of almond milk. I'm going to add that to it. I'll put it back on the heat just for a minute. And the vegetables are going to soak this right up.
Do you prefer almond milk over regular milk?
Well, regular milk will be dairy. So
but for this, which is vegetarian.
If you want this to be dairy-free, then if you want this to be vegan, then you're just going to omit the last ingredient, which is Parmesan cheese. So far this dish is vegan. If you want to add the Parmesan cheese, and you want to add the Parmesan cheese, because it really makes the flavors come together, now this is just vegetarian. So that's why you wouldn't add the cow's milk. But another reason I use almond milk rather than the cow's milk is because F Factor is a low carb diet. And 1 cup of milk is 12 grams of carb. 1 cup of almond milk is 1 gram of carb. So you're keeping the carbs really low by adding the almond milk. Now, I really wish I could angle my camera, but I'm gonna try and bring it to you. But can you guys now see that this is looking just like a traditional Bolognese? All that's left to do is add a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan. Okay, and now, let me clear this off. I'm going to drain my pasta.
High fiber pasta.
My high fiber pasta. I took 1 cup of the pasta water. And the reason I saved 1 cup of the water that the pasta cooked in is that a lot of the starch from the pasta was leached out and added, and it goes into the water. So this is a natural thickener to my sauce. So you want to add 1 cup of pasta water to your sauce. And that will actually make the sauce come together. Put this down. Okay, time to strain my pasta. Here it is. And now I'm just going to add my pasta. So you can see this is really simple, guys. It's also 1 pot. Other than the pasta pot that we cooked the pasta in, you're not using a ton of pots and pans. So since I've been cooking 7 breakfasts, 7 lunches, 7 dinners, 7 days a week, I'm happy to have at least 1 recipe that does not turn my kitchen completely up and down and make me have to clean like 10 pots and pans. Okay, let me now plate this. It looks amazing. And all you would do is add some fresh basil on top of this for a little bit of color. Let's see if I could show you guys. Can you see?
Wow. Okay, we have to see you take a bite at least.
Of course.
Okay.
But it really, guys, would pass any test if anyone wanted to eat a Bolognese, because it just has the exact appearance. You could add a little bit more parm, as I said, a little bit more Parmesan cheese, a little bit of basil, or some fresh oregano. A little bit of green for color is always nice, or parsley. But as you said, let me make sure that it passed the test. Guys, this is so good. I really hope that you are inspired to make this for your family. One more bite, hold on.
There are 110 people really hungry right now watching this.
And you would never think that there's cauliflower in here. It doesn't have that, you know, sometimes cauliflower, cabbage can have like that really strong flavor. It's really masked. What you do taste is the heartiness of the mushrooms. You taste the garlic, you taste that tomato sauce. And because we added that tomato paste and browned it, it makes this sauce taste a lot more flavorful than just cooking tomatoes for the 20 minutes that it cooked. Typically, traditionally, a good marinara needs to cook for hours. And we really were able to whip this up in 30 minutes while still providing a flavor that tastes as if it's really been cooking on the stove all day.
Wow, super impressed. Bon appetit. So we know that bolognese is your last meal on earth.
Exactly.
We know you have 5 kids. We now know this too. We know you unintentionally became a dietitian, and so now you've combined. Tell us just one more thing about you as we see you enjoy this vegan until you put the cheese. So vegetarian bolognese.
Yeah. One more thing about me. I think I'm just someone that loves people and loves to make people happy. And I think food has always been something I've noted is a way to really bring a family together. Some of my best memories are cooking with my grandma in the kitchen or celebrating holidays, you know, with my family. And therefore, when I think about food bringing so much joy, if I can create recipes that make people happy, and yet I know as a dietitian, these recipes are honoring their health and their waistlines, I feel really privileged to be able to use my platform to hopefully inspire each and every one of you that looking and feeling your best does not have to come with compromise. It should not feel punitive. It should not feel restrictive. It's about finding recipes or ways of eating that, as I said, fill you up with joy, put a smile on your face, fill up your belly, but still allow you to look and feel your best.
Wow, Tanya, thank you so much. And that looks fantastic, that bolognese. We know how invested you and Anthony are in FIDF and in supporting the well-being of the soldiers. And as you mentioned, you adopted 3 brigades, I think you said. And we thought we would surprise you with a message from one of your adopted Israeli Air Force squadrons. Take a look.
Dear Tanya and Anthony, first of all, we want to say thank you in the name of the 100th Squadron for your kind support and great generosity.
It's especially appreciated during these complicated times, and we hope you and all your loved ones are safe and doing well.
Together we will overcome this global pandemic.
Thank you, Tanya and Anthony!
Wow, really.
My bolognese.
I'm sure they can't wait to see you, and I'm sure you can't wait to visit Israel, as many of us are feeling. Thank you so much for your continued support and for showing us and giving us of your time today. And of course, we hope that all our viewers at home stay safe and healthy during these unprecedented times. And now, you know, one more dish that can keep you both healthy and satisfied. You know, under normal circumstances, 1 in 5 IDF soldiers' families suffers from financial difficulties. And now with the pandemic, that statistic unfortunately is rising as the number of families facing economic hardship increases, and already struggling families are facing further strain. So we FIDF supporters stand together with our Israeli brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, and through FIDF's Dignity program, you can actually help reduce the financial pressure and stress by providing soldiers and their families the day-to-day essentials to meet their basic needs. So I hope that you will join me in continuing to embrace and support our soldiers during this difficult time. Well, in Israel, things are starting to open up, thankfully, so hopefully we will continue to see that happening. And of course, I invite everyone to join FIDF on Sunday, May 27th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for FIDF's virtual National Women's Event with special guest speaker Safra Katz, CEO of Oracle. And for more information about upcoming events, go to www.fidf.org/engage. We hope to see you. There's so many exciting things coming up. And so everyone just stay safe and toda raba. Thank you.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.